Imagine you have a crystal ball, but not one of those carnival crystal balls, cloudy and full of cheap parlor tricks. Imagine a crystal ball made of silicon, cables, and millions of lines of code. A crystal ball that doesn't tell you if you're going to find love or if you're going to have good health, but something much more tangible. It tells you exactly which horse is going to cross the finish line at the most competitive and richest racetrack in the world. Now, imagine using that crystal ball not once, but thousands of times, day after day, race after race, and every time you use it, your bank account grows. $100 becomes $1,000, $1,000 becomes $1 million, $1 million becomes $100 million, until one day you realize you have accumulated over $1 billion. You have made more money than Michael Jordan, more than most Wall Street CEOs, and you've done it without robbing a bank, without selling drugs, and without scamming anyone. You've done it simply by outsmarting the system. This story seems ripped from a science fiction novel, but it happened in real life. It happened on the humid, neon-soaked streets of Hong Kong during the 80s and 90s. It is the story of Bill Benter, a physics genius who decided he didn't want to use his brain to teach at a boring university, but to defeat chance itself. It is the story of how he built the most sophisticated algorithm in history, software so powerful that bookmakers had to ban him from playing because he was winning too much. Today, you're going to enter the secret world of professional betting syndicates. You're going to see how mathematics can predict the future, and you are going to discover the price that must be paid when you become the man who broke the sport of kings. To understand how a physics student from Pittsburgh ended up being public enemy number one of the Hong Kong Jockey Club, we have to start at the beginning. And the beginning isn't at a racetrack, but in a Las Vegas casino. Bill Benter was a brilliant, analytical young man, bored with academic life. In the late 70s, he read a book that changed his life, Beat the Dealer by Edward Thorp. The book explained how to count cards in blackjack. For most people, counting cards is black magic. For Benter, it was simply an equation. If there are more high cards in the deck, the advantage is with the player. If there are more low cards, the advantage is with the house. Simple, logical, irresistible. Benter packed his bags, quit his studies, and took a bus to Las Vegas. There he met Alan Woods, a charismatic Australian who was already leading a team of card counters. Together, they formed a lethal alliance. Benter provided the mathematical brain, Woods provided the experience and the capital. For a while, they crushed it. They lived the dream. Free suites, fancy dinners, and backpacks full of cash. But Las Vegas is not a charity. The casino started detecting their patterns. First came polite invitations to leave. Then security got more aggressive. Finally, Benter and Woods found themselves on the Black Book. Their photos were in every security room in Nevada. Their blackjack career was over before it really started. They were burned, expelled from paradise. But Benter had tasted blood. He knew that math could beat the game. He just needed a game where they couldn't kick him out for winning. A game where you didn't play against the house, but against other players. And so he looked to the east, toward Hong Kong. Hong Kong in the 80s was the Wild West of capitalism, a frantic British colony full of money, smoke, and noise. And in the center of that madness was the Hong Kong Jockey Club. Horse racing in Hong Kong is not a sport, it is a religion. The amount of money moved in a single afternoon of racing at Sha Tin Racecourse exceeds what is moved in an entire year at racetracks in the United States. It is an ocean of liquidity. And most importantly, it is a pari-mutuel betting system. This means the club takes a fixed commission, around 17%, and the rest of the money is distributed among the winners. You don't play against the casino, you play against the ignorant masses. You play against the taxi driver who bets on horse number 4 because it's his lucky number, or against the businessman who bets on the horse Speedy Bolt because he likes the name. Benter did the math. If he could predict the outcome of races with an accuracy just slightly higher than the general public, enough to overcome that 17% commission, he could win money infinitely. The problem was that predicting a horse race is infinitely harder than counting cards. In blackjack, there are fixed variables. In a race, there are living beings, horses that get tired, jockeys who make mistakes, rain that muddies the track, wind, temperature, luck. It seemed impossible. It seemed like chaos. But Benter saw patterns in the chaos. He moved into a tiny, dirty apartment in Hong Kong.
He bought the first personal computers that hit the market. Prehistoric machines with green screens and ridiculous memory compared to a modern watch. And he started inputting data. He hired students to go to the Jockey Club library and copy by hand the results of thousands of past races, horse names, weights, times, jockeys, trainers, track conditions, everything. Benter spent months locked away, typing numbers, building a gigantic database. His idea was to create a probabilistic model. He wanted to find out how much each factor influenced the final result. How much does it matter that the horse rested for 2 weeks? How much does it matter that the jockey is the current champion? How much does it matter that it rained? Benter assigned weights to each variable. He created a monstrous formula with hundreds of parameters. In 1985, the software was ready. Benter and Woods, still partners, gathered all their capital, about $150,000. It was everything they had. If they failed, they would be broke in a foreign country. On the first day of the season, they went to the track with their predictions printed on dot matrix paper. The computer told them which horses to bet on. They blindly obeyed the algorithm. It was a disaster. They lost money, a lot of money. The first season was a slow and painful hemorrhage. The model didn't work. They had underestimated the club's commission. They had overestimated the importance of certain data. Woods, the Australian partner, was furious. He was an instinctive gambler, and watching a machine eat his money made him sick. They argued, they screamed at each other, and finally, they split up. Woods went his own way, convinced that Benter was a failure. Benter was left alone in his apartment full of computers, with his capital decimated and his pride wounded.
Anyone else would have given up, would have gone back to the States to teach physics. But Benter did something that defines geniuses. Instead of quitting, he dug deeper. He realized his model was too simple. It was missing something. It was missing the public odds. Benter had a revelation. The public, the mass of bettors, isn't entirely stupid. The wisdom of the crowd is often right. If everyone bets on the favorite horse, it's usually for a good reason. His model was trying to beat the public by ignoring what the public thought. Benter rewrote his software. This time, he incorporated the public betting odds as just another variable inside his own equation. He used people's opinion as a starting point, and then used his own data to refine that opinion. It was a subtle change, but revolutionary. In 1988, Benter was back in the fight. He had a new partner, new funds, and software version 2.0. This time, something magical happened. The computer spat out predictions, and, race after race, the results began to align. They didn't win every time, of course, that's impossible, but they won enough. They won a little more than they lost. Compound interest started to work. His small apartment turned into a NASA command center. They filled the room with noisy servers. The heat was unbearable, so they had the air conditioning on max all day. Benter hired a team of operators. Their work was frantic. The racing odds changed right up until the last second. The team had to call the club's betting lines and dictate the bets just before the starting bell rang. They had to be fast. Bet $5,000 on horse 3, $10,000 on the 4-6 combo. It was a military operation. And then the money started pouring in. In their first good year, they won $600,000. The next year, $3 million. Benter didn't spend it on Ferraris or parties. He reinvested it all into improving the system. He hired mathematicians, statisticians, horse racing journalists. They started analyzing variables no one else looked at. Did the horse have a good breakfast? Did the trainer get divorced recently? Was the wind blowing favorably in the final stretch? Everything went into the database. But success attracts attention, and the Hong Kong Jockey Club is not an organization that tolerates anomalies. They started noticing a group of phone accounts that were winning systematically. They weren't lucky winners, they were mathematical winners. They were winning on exotic bets, the hardest ones, the triple trio, where you have to pick the top 3 horses in 3 different races. The odds are won in millions. Benter was hitting them with terrifying frequency.
The club launched an investigation. To them, this was an existential threat. If someone could predict the races, the game ceased to be chance and became a transfer of funds from the public to Bill Benter. Trust in the system would collapse. They called Benter the Syndicate. It was a name that sounded like the mafia, like organized crime. One day, Benter received a call. It wasn't a death threat. It was something worse for him. The club cut off his access. They closed his telephone betting accounts. They banned him from physically entering the racetrack. Suddenly, the man who had cracked the code had no way to enter the code into the machine. It was a devastating blow, but Benter, once again, proved that intelligence finds paths where brute force hits walls. If he couldn't bet by phone, he would bet another way. Benter looked for intermediaries, trusted people who could go to the track or have clean accounts, but that was slow and dangerous. He needed a technological solution. He discovered that the Jockey Club had launched a new device for high rollers, the Customer Input Terminal. It was a sort of primitive tablet that allowed bets to be placed directly by connecting to the club's servers. It was designed for rich guys to bet from their yachts. Benter acquired dozens of these terminals through figureheads. He took them to his secret office, and then he did what he did best: reverse engineering. He took the terminals apart, analyzed their circuits, and designed a system to connect his own computers directly to the terminals. He no longer needed human operators dictating bets over the phone. Now his algorithm could talk directly to the Jockey Club computer. It could place thousands of bets in the final seconds before the race, when odds are most stable. It was total automation, the dream of the perpetual money machine. With this new system, the profits became obscene. In a single season, Benter's team won over $50 million. They became a multinational enterprise. They had offices in Manila to avoid the pressure in Hong Kong. They had employees analyzing race videos frame by frame to see if a horse had stumbled or if a jockey had pulled the reins wrong. Benter had created the Google of horse racing before Google existed.
But there was a thorn in his side, the triple trio. It was the jackpot, the holy grail, a progressive pot that could reach $100 million. Benter had won it many times, but always sharing it with other winners. He wanted to win it alone. He wanted the perfect prize. On November 6th, 2001, the triple trio jackpot reached a record figure, over 100 million Hong Kong dollars. The city was in a fever. Everyone from grandmothers to bankers was betting. Benter prepared his software. That night, he decided to do something risky. He was going to cast a massive net. He was going to bet millions of dollars on thousands of different combinations to cover almost all reasonable mathematical probabilities. It was a giant investment, a calculated all-in. The race began. In his Manila office, Benter and his team watched the screens in silence. First race, hit. Second race, hit. Only the third remained. The horses turned the final corner. The algorithm had predicted an unlikely combination, a mix of favorites and dark horse outsiders that no one else would have. The horses crossed the line. 1, 2, 3. The silence in the office was broken by a gasp. They had it. They had hit the exact combination. And not only that, upon reviewing the club's estimates, they realized something that froze their blood. No one else had it. They were the sole winners. They had just pocketed 13 million US dollars in a single night. The winning ticket was printed on one of their machines. But then, Benter did something no one expected, something that still baffles those who hear the story today. He looked at the winning ticket, $13 million, and he decided not to cash it. Why? Why does someone win $13 million and leave it on the table? The reason was complex. Benter knew the Jockey Club was tightening the noose. If he went to collect that massive prize, he would have to reveal his identity or that of his proxies. It would expose his entire infrastructure. It would endanger the long-term money-making machine for a one-time payout. Besides, Benter was already immensely wealthy. Money was no longer the main goal. The goal was the intellectual challenge, and he had already beaten it. He had defeated the system absolutely.
If you are enjoying the video, I want to encourage you to hit the subscribe and like buttons. These stories require a lot of time and research, and thanks to your support, we can keep making them. But there was something else. Benter felt that betting money, in a way, wasn't his. It came from the common people of Hong Kong. So, he let the ticket expire. According to club rules, if no one claims the prize, the money goes to charity. Benter gifted $13 million to Hong Kong hospitals and schools without saying a word, without taking the credit. It was his final act of dominance. Not only could he beat them whenever he wanted, but he could afford the luxury of despising their money. Over the years, the cat and mouse game continued, but Benter gradually stepped back. He became a philanthropist. He gave lectures. Nowadays, he lives in Pittsburgh, his hometown. He is a quiet man who donates millions to charity, medical research, and the arts. If you saw him on the street, you would think he is a retired university professor, maybe a librarian. You would never guess that this man, with his brain and a handful of old computers, defeated the largest gambling industry in Asia and extracted over $1 billion from the market. Bill Benter's story leaves us with a fascinating lesson. It teaches us that what we call luck is often just a lack of data. For the average bettor, a horse race is a random, exciting, and cruel event. For Benter, it was a physics problem with a solution. He didn't play, he solved. It also reminds us that knowledge is the most unfair advantage there is. Benter didn't have more money than the Jockey Club. He didn't have more political power. He didn't have thugs. He had information. He knew things no one else knew. He knew that the jockey's weight affected the horse 0.03% more on grass tracks than on sand tracks. He knew details so tiny they seemed ridiculous, and when added up, created an infallible crystal ball. But perhaps the most intriguing part of his legacy is the ethics of what he did. Benter spent his life in a gray zone. He didn't cheat, he didn't break any explicit law, but he manipulated the system on an industrial scale. Is it fair to use a supercomputer against a taxi driver who bets with his heart? Is it fair to bring a bazooka to a knife fight? Benter would say the market is free and that he was simply more efficient. The Jockey Club would say he destroyed the sporting spirit.
Today, Benter's legacy lives on. Professional betting syndicates exist. They're more sophisticated than ever, using artificial intelligence and machine learning, but all of them, without exception, owe their existence to Bill Benter. He was the pioneer. He was the first one who stared chaos in the eyes and didn't blink. We often think of geniuses as people who cure diseases or invent rockets. Benter applied his genius to something much more earthly, making money. And in doing so, he exposed the cracks in our reality. He showed us that the world is much more predictable than we want to admit, that if you have the right data and enough patience, you can see the future. So the next time someone tells you that the house always wins, remember Bill Benter. Remember the physics student who was kicked out of Las Vegas and ended up buying his own freedom with an algorithm. The house always wins unless you build a bigger, faster, and smarter house on top of it. Bill Benter didn't break the rules. Bill Benter rewrote the entire game. And when he finished playing, he left the controller on the table, turned off the lights, and went home, knowing that no one ever again would play the same way. But the story has an epilogue, a shadow that chases everyone who tries to follow in his footsteps. Alan Woods, Benter's original partner who split from him after the first failure, also found success on his own, winning millions, but he died of cancer, alone, in his luxury penthouse in Hong Kong, surrounded by screens and numbers, obsessed until the end. Benter, on the other hand, chose to get out. He chose to use money to live, not live for money. And perhaps that was his most important prediction, knowing when the equation of life no longer yields positive results and it's time to retire. The software Benter created remains largely a mystery. Parts of his code have leaked, copycats have tried to replicate it, but the secret sauce, the exact coefficients that gave him the key to the vault, remain in his head or on some encrypted hard drive in a safe. It is the Excalibur of modern mathematics, a weapon too powerful to be shared. And meanwhile, at the Sha Tin racecourse, the horses keep running, the crowd keeps shouting, the money keeps flowing like a golden river. And somewhere, invisible in the crowd, there is always someone with a laptop, watching the numbers, looking for the pattern, dreaming of being the next Bill Benter. But what they don't know is that the trick wasn't the software, the trick was the man behind it. Because software can calculate probabilities, but only a human being can have the audacity to bet their life on a mathematical formula and hold their breath until they cross the finish line.
This is the legend of the billion-dollar algorithm, a story that confirms to us that in the information age, the new wizards don't carry wands or top hats. They wear glasses, they know how to program in C++, and they can make a casino's money disappear without leaving their chair. And you, What would you do if you had that crystal ball? Would you win enough to be free and stop? Or would greed make you keep going until the system discovered you? Most of us believe we would stop. Benter did, and that's, perhaps more than the $1 billion, is what makes him truly extraordinary. The next time you watch a race, don't just look at the horses, look at the odds. Watch how they change. Those blinking numbers are the pulse of millions of people thinking, feeling, and betting. And in the middle of that sea of data, remember that there was a man who learned to navigate it, who built a ship of logic and mathematics and sailed toward the horizon with holds full of gold, leaving the casino pirates watching from the shore, wondering how the hell he had done it. Game over. Benter wins.